Dober Dane, and welcome to everybody as you're logging in today. We are grateful to be spending this time with you, and we thank you for giving us your time today. Over the next few weeks, we will be discussing the topic of bullying. And we want to begin by introducing the facilitators of this training and also giving a little bit of background information. My name is Joe McGeary. I am an associate professor of counseling and psychology, and I am in Cambridge in the state of Massachusetts.
Добрий день. I am
Добрий день.
Colleen O'Neill, an associate professor of school psychology at University of Maryland in the United States.
Добрий день. I'm Tricia Ryan. I am a pediatric neuropsychologist and assistant professor and work in Connecticut, in the United States, at a hospital for brain health.
My name is Sal Tarasi. I'm an adjunct faculty member at Lesley University and director of the Lesley Institute for Trauma project. And as always, we are honored to be with you today.
So we welcome everybody who is on the Zoom call with us, and we invite you, if you are on the Zoom call, to put any thoughts or questions in the chat. So our topic for the next few weeks, by request, is bullying prevention. And when I say by request, as some people who are here know, we have done a series of trainings on particular topics prior to now. And we may occasionally reference them. We can always share links for videos and previous trainings for people who are interested. And if you have been a part of any of our trainings, you probably know that we like to do a couple of things before we get into the content. And the first is to remind everyone of this concept of the window of tolerance. And the reason this matters is because when we are serving people who are experiencing stresses like bullying, they may become hypo or hyper aroused by the experience. When someone is hyper aroused, it can be helpful to support them in calming and down regulation activities such as taking a breath. When someone is hypo-aroused, it may be helpful to support them in doing grounding activities such as movement and body-oriented activities. Because when someone is too far outside of their window of tolerance, they can cease to learn or cease to hear or cease to engage, and that can be problematic. As looking for signs in the people you are working with about hyper and hypoarousal, it is important to know where you are in regards to your window of tolerance.
І коли ви працюєте з людьми, і коли ви їм допомагаєте повернутися у вікно толерантності, дуже важливо звертати увагу і на себе теж. Тобто розуміти, де саме я знаходжусь, допомагаючи іншим у вікні толерантності, як я себе почуваю у моменті.
And this state changes moment to moment, so we encourage you to check in on your own current state of arousal. So we use this thermometer as a helpful way of doing that. The name is subjective units of stress, so it is about your own assessment of yourself in this moment. The more we know about ourselves, the more insights we can share with other people. So if you think about your number on this thermometer when you first logged in, I would be curious how that would compare to right now and how both of those numbers would compare to 30 minutes from now. This information in mind as we move forward into the content. And as I mentioned at the beginning, this training is being offered by request. Some of you likely participated in the survey that we sent out to gather more information about what you are interested in learning about. And if you have not filled out the survey, we are happy to continue to take your feedback. But clearly, most people who responded said that this is an important topic. And obviously, if you registered for this training, you are interested in talking and learning about bullying. But we've also learned about the group's interest in other topics too. And as you can see from this list, there is a variety of topics that the group says are important. There are some of these topics that we have addressed in previous trainings, and there are some that will come up during this bullying training. But this training was created separate from these list of ideas. So particularly for people who have not yet responded to the survey, we invite you to look at this list and see if there's anything additional that you want to bring to our attention. So now we will transition into our topic, bullying. And we bring this quote from Aesop to you as an entry point to the topic. And truly, this is a wise piece of advice because when you think about what bullying is, oftentimes it is a disconnection like what Aesop describes here. And today we will go through a variety of definitions of bullying and components of bullying. But we believe that this theme of connection and disconnection between people and groups will come up repeatedly throughout our time together. So it's important to establish a shared understanding of the definition of bullying. And while this definition is coming from United States law, we believe that it is a good generalizable definition of bullying. And it's important to underscore that bullying can occur in many different forms, written, verbal, electronic, etc. And as you see from the words in bold, there is harm, fear, hostility, disruption, and an infringement on rights. So while the specific behaviors can vary, these are themes that are consistent. And you will see on this slide that there is language that involves school. So this is implying a relationship between children. However, the concepts can also be generalized to adult relationships. It's also important to understand what is not bullying. A conflict could be a fight, a disagreement. There is an aggressor and a target in bullying. When there is equal power and there is perhaps both sides aggressing, that is conflict. With bullying, there is also a repetition along with an intention to do harm. My sister and I may disagree, but that does not mean we want to harm each other. Another important set of definitions here are to differentiate between teasing and taunting. Now, this is important information for us to have a baseline understanding, but you can also share this information with people that you are working with. Teasing is sort of the fun equivalent of conflict. There is not a differential in power. There is not an intention to harm the other person. Taunting is different. And as you can see from this slide here, the intent to harm is one differentiating aspect of taunting.
Yeah.
And when the targeted person says stop, in the situation with taunting, the taunting does not stop. So if you are investigating a situation, some of the questions you can ask are about whether the person's request to have the behaviors stopped was heard. And if you are supporting someone who is experiencing this kind of behavior, then you can support them in trying to advocate for it to stop. And depending on the results of that advocacy, then you will have a clearer understanding of what is going on. As we seek to find out if a situation is bullying, we remind you of these key important factors. And of course, cyberbullying is the newest and increasingly more common form of bullying. And as we'll talk about more in later conversations, cyberbullying has unique features that can make it more harmful in some ways. For one thing, in other forms of bullying, if the target and the bully walked away from each other, then the target was out of harm's way. But with 24-hour access to technology, it can be much harder to get away from cyberbullying. So there are a variety of effects that we have already highlighted, but we also want to bring your attention to a couple of points on this screen. The second item on the list, reasonable fear of harm. Notice that the experience of fear, the perception that harm is likely, is sufficient. So if there's a situation where a person is worried that they may be physically harmed or that damage may be done to their property, but it hasn't happened yet, that still is important to pay attention to. And the other one we want to highlight now is the third item, damage to property. It is more difficult to have that one occur in the context of cyberbullying. But it's a good reminder that bullying and taunting are not just about calling someone names or saying mean things. And we may see the creation of a hostile environment in the workplace between adults. And whereas damage to property is an example of direct and overt aggression, creation of a hostile environment may also include exclusion of. So we want to introduce a related concept here that can be at the heart of bullying. We all have some examples of implicit bias. Implicit bias is a not necessarily consciously understood preference for or against something. Implicit bias can be harmless and a normal part of human experience. It could be as common as preferring one sports team over their rival. It might even have positive effects, such as you may be biased towards looking out for your family with a particular high level of energy. But implicit bias is also at the core of discrimination and uh, harmful acts towards other groups. Imagine for a minute I asked you to, in your mind, create two groups of people. You don't need to tell anyone who fits into the two groups, and you can be as creative as you want with how you respond to this prompt. And maybe you even will have more than one response to the question. So knowing that there is no wrong answer to this, I will ask you to imagine something. In your mind right now, imagine a group that you call us and a group that you call them. And just notice who you envision in the us group and who you envision in the them group. I imagine there are some obvious responses. Clearly, your country is at war, and war is very much an us versus them experience. But notice how else you define us and them in your mind right now. And again, there's no wrong answer. We all do this, but what you are seeing is one manifestation of your own implicit bias. And the more we make our implicit bias part of our conscious awareness, the more we can choose whether to act accordingly. So, putting yourself in the position of a bully, we can ask an important question. What is it about that other person that I don't like? Is it something they did? Have they harmed me? Or could there be some element of my implicit bias towards who that person represents? So we'll take a moment to do a meaningful pause. And continuing the questions that I just raised about implicit bias, we encourage you to consider the questions on the screen here. And we want to ask you to consider the next question, which is not just what are the biases, but how can you maintain connections to other people in spite of the situation? And this question is one for you to consider right now, not to have a perfect answer. Presumably, you all are here because you know bullying is a problem. And the fact that you are here is likely an indication that you seek a solution. So Information and collaboration, those will be our tools to further investigate how we can connect and how we can be the light in this darkness. Well, maybe you have good ideas of how to answer that question right now, and maybe it's hard to think of a good response. But again, this is our hope together that we will collectively work towards some answers.